The power of personal accountability is one of the most significant principles when it comes to personal growth and transformation. It is the ability to own your actions, decisions, and behaviors without shifting blame to external circumstances or other people. Too often, we fall into the habit of pointing fingers, finding reasons outside of ourselves for why things are not working or why we haven't reached the goals we set out to achieve. We say things like, if only this hadn't happened, or if only they hadn't done that. While external circumstances can impact us, it is our internal response to those circumstances that determines our path forward. Personal accountability starts with the recognition that you are the central agent of your own life. It means acknowledging that the choices you make, the attitudes you hold, and the behaviors you engage in directly influence where you are today. When you stop looking outside of yourself for answers or solutions and instead turn inward, that's when real change begins. The truth is, life will always throw challenges your way. People may disappoint you, circumstances may be less than ideal, but how you choose to respond is entirely within your control. The moment you understand this, you unlock a profound sense of power. Taking responsibility for your own actions means letting go of excuses. It's easy to say, I didn't have time, or I wasn't given the opportunity. These are narratives we tell ourselves to avoid confronting the discomfort of not meeting our own expectations. But accountability requires a level of honesty that forces us to look at the ways we might be sabotaging our own growth. It requires us to own up to the habits and behaviors that hold us back, and to acknowledge when we're not giving our best effort. However, personal accountability isn't just about taking responsibility for failures or shortcomings. It's also about recognizing and owning your successes. When you make progress, however small, it's essential to take ownership of that as well. Celebrating those moments of growth reinforces the understanding that your efforts are paying off. You are the one taking the steps forward, and each step is a testament to your commitment to self-improvement. Accountability, in this sense, becomes an empowering force, one that shifts your focus from what's going wrong to what you're capable of achieving. It's important to realize that personal accountability does not mean blaming yourself for everything that goes wrong or shouldering all the weight of the world. It's not about self-punishment or harsh criticism. Instead, it's about recognizing the areas where you have control and making choices that align with your desired outcomes. When something goes wrong, accountability means asking, what could I have done differently? Rather than who is at fault, this simple shift in mindset turns setbacks into opportunities for growth, rather than moments of defeat. Accountability also fosters resilience. When you stop depending on external validation or the approval of others to define your worth or your success, you build a stronger foundation within yourself. You stop waiting for someone else to fix things or to give you permission to move forward. You become your own source of motivation. The comparison trap is one of the most pervasive and damaging habits we fall into, often without even realizing it. From a young age, we're conditioned to measure our worth and success against others. It begins in school when we compare grades, athletic achievements, or social status, and it continues into adulthood as we look at careers, relationships, and material possessions. This cycle of comparison becomes ingrained in us, and before we know it, we are constantly evaluating ourselves through the lens of someone else's life. The problem with this is that comparison, by its very nature, is a trap that can rob us of our joy, self-esteem, and personal fulfillment. At the heart of the comparison trap is a fundamental misunderstanding, the belief that someone else's success diminishes our own, or that their path should somehow mirror ours. But what we fail to realize is that each person's journey is entirely unique. Every individual has a different set of experiences, opportunities, and challenges, and comparing our progress to theirs is like comparing apples to oranges. It's inherently unfair and misleading. Yet the tendency to look outward rather than inward can feel almost automatic. Social media has only exacerbated this issue, giving us 24/7 access to the curated highlight reels of others' lives. We see the promotions, the vacations, the happy relationships, and we think, why not me? But what we don't see are the struggles, the sacrifices, and the failures behind those moments. The danger of comparison is that it shifts our focus from our own path to someone else's, and when we're focused on them, we lose sight of what really matters, our own growth. When we become consumed with how someone else is doing, we stop appreciating where we are in our journey. We start to believe that we're falling behind or that we're not good enough because our achievements don't measure up to theirs. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, and even resentment. What's more, when we're focused on someone else's success, we diminish our own accomplishments. Instead of celebrating the strides we've made, we minimize them because they don't seem as impressive in comparison. One of the most insidious aspects of the comparison trap is that it breeds a sense of scarcity. When we compare ourselves to others, we adopt the mindset that success, happiness, or fulfillment is limited, that if someone else has it, there's less for us. This scarcity mindset fosters competition rather than collaboration, and it makes us feel as though we're in constant competition with everyone around us. But life isn't a zero-sum game. Just because someone else is thriving doesn't mean you can't thrive too. In fact, there is enough success, joy, and abundance to go around for everyone, but we can't access that abundance if we're too busy fixating on someone else's portion. Moreover, comparison often blinds us to our own strengths. When we focus too much on what others are doing, we overlook the unique talents and abilities we possess. We might see someone excelling in one area and think, I'll never be as good as them, without recognizing that we have different gifts that make us equally valuable. This kind of thinking can be particularly harmful because it erodes our confidence and prevents us from fully embracing our potential. The irony is that the very people we compare ourselves to are often dealing with their own insecurities and challenges. What looks like perfection from the outside may not be the full story, and by idealizing others, we set ourselves up for unnecessary disappointment. The comparison trap also distorts our perception of time. We often compare our beginning to someone else's middle or end, not taking into account the years of effort, hard work, and setbacks they've experienced to get where they are. We want immediate results, forgetting that every journey has its own pace. This can lead to frustration and impatience, making us feel as though we're not making progress fast enough. But the reality is, growth takes time, and every step we take, no matter how small, is part of the larger picture. By constantly comparing ourselves to others, we undermine our progress and overlook the significance of our own milestones. It's important to remember that comparison is often based on incomplete information. We're comparing ourselves to an illusion, to a version of someone else's life that we've only seen a fraction of. We don't know the whole story, the struggles, the failures, the moments of doubt that person may have faced. And yet we hold ourselves to an impossible standard, expecting to measure up to a narrative that isn't even real. Building resilience through self-reflection is one of the most powerful ways to cultivate inner strength and navigate life's inevitable challenges. Resilience is not just the ability to bounce back from hardship, it's the capacity to grow and thrive in the face of adversity. But resilience isn't something that simply happens, it's developed through intentional practices, and self-reflection plays a crucial role in this process. When we take the time to examine our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, we begin to understand how we respond to life's difficulties. And from that understanding, we can develop the skills needed to face future challenges with greater strength and clarity. Self-reflection involves pausing and looking inward, taking an honest inventory of where we are mentally and emotionally. It's a practice that requires vulnerability, because it means confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves, our fears, our insecurities, and the patterns of behavior that may not be serving us well. But it's precisely in this vulnerability that resilience is built. When we allow ourselves to sit with our discomfort rather than avoiding it or distracting ourselves from it, we start to build emotional fortitude. We learn that we are capable of facing difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. One of the most valuable aspects of self-reflection is that it gives us the space to process our experiences. In the rush of everyday life, we often don't take the time to fully absorb what we're going through. We move from one challenge to the next without giving ourselves the opportunity to reflect on what we've learned, how we've grown, or where we still need to improve. But when we engage in self-reflection, we create a moment of pause. We step outside the whirlwind of daily life and allow ourselves the grace to observe our own journey. In doing so, we gain perspective, and this perspective is essential for building resilience. It helps us see that no matter how difficult a situation may feel in the moment, it's part of a larger narrative of growth and development. Through self-reflection, we also become more aware of the patterns that shape our responses to stress and hardship. Each of us has habitual ways of reacting to difficult situations, whether it's shutting down, becoming defensive, or avoiding the issue altogether. These patterns are often unconscious, meaning we aren't fully aware of them in the moment. But by taking the time to reflect, we can bring these patterns to the surface. We can begin to notice when we're falling into old habits that may not be helpful, and we can make more conscious choices about how we want to respond. This self-awareness is the foundation of resilience. It empowers us to take control of our reactions and develop healthier, more constructive ways of dealing with adversity. In addition, self-reflection allows us to reconnect with our inner strengths. When life becomes overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of our capabilities. We become so focused on what's going wrong that we forget all the times we've successfully navigated challenges in the past. But by looking back and reflecting on previous hardships, we remind ourselves of our resilience. We remember that we've been through tough times before and we've come out stronger on the other side. This awareness gives us confidence and helps us approach future challenges with a sense of self-assurance. We realize that we are capable of handling more than we might have thought. Resilience isn't just about surviving tough times, it's about growing through them. And growth requires self-reflection because it's through reflection that we identify the areas where we need to change and improve. When we face adversity, we are often forced to confront parts of ourselves that we may not like. Perhaps it's our tendency to procrastinate when things get difficult, or our habit of letting fear dictate our decisions. These moments of self-awareness can be uncomfortable, but they are also opportunities for growth. By reflecting on our weaknesses, we can take steps to strengthen them. We can make conscious choices to develop new habits, new ways of thinking, and new approaches to challenges. Moreover, self-reflection deepens our emotional intelligence, which is a key component of resilience. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions, as well as the emotions of others. When we reflect on our emotional responses to difficult situations, we become more attuned to what triggers us and why. We learn to recognize the early signs of stress, frustration, or overwhelm, and we can take steps to manage those emotions before they spiral out of control. This emotional self-regulation is critical for resilience because it allows us to stay grounded and focused even in the face of intense pressure. Another important aspect of building resilience through self-reflection is that it encourages us to take responsibility for our own well-being. When we reflect on how we're handling stress or adversity, we may realize that we're neglecting certain aspects of self-care, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental. We might notice that we're not getting enough rest, not nourishing our bodies properly, or not taking time to relax and recharge. Self-reflection helps us become more mindful of our needs, and it motivates us to take better care of ourselves. This proactive approach to self-care is essential for resilience because it ensures that we have the energy, clarity, and emotional balance to navigate challenges effectively. Self-reflection also fosters a greater sense of compassion, both for ourselves and for others. When we take the time to reflect on our own struggles and challenges, we develop a deeper understanding of what it means to be human. We recognize that everyone experiences difficulty, and we learn to approach ourselves with kindness rather than criticism. This self-compassion is crucial for resilience because it helps us avoid the trap of self-blame or shame when things don't go as planned. Instead of beating ourselves up for not being perfect, we can acknowledge that we are doing our best, and that's enough. Embrace imperfection is a concept that challenges one of the most ingrained beliefs many of us hold, that in order to be worthy, valuable, or successful, we must be perfect. From a young age, we are conditioned to strive for perfection in various areas of our lives, whether it's in our appearance, achievements, relationships, or even our personalities. Society often glorifies flawlessness, pushing us to present ourselves as having it all together, as if mistakes, failures, or vulnerabilities are things to be hidden or ashamed of. But this pursuit of perfection is not only unattainable, it's also exhausting and deeply harmful to our sense of self-worth. The idea of embracing imperfection invites us to step back from these unrealistic expectations and recognize that our true value lies not in being flawless, but in being authentic. Perfection is an illusion, a moving target that no one can ever truly hit. When we chase after it, we set ourselves up for inevitable disappointment because no matter how hard we try, we will always fall short. This constant striving creates a cycle of self-criticism, anxiety, and dissatisfaction as we measure ourselves against an impossible standard. But when we begin to embrace imperfection, we free ourselves from the burden of having to be someone we're not. We give ourselves permission to be human, to make mistakes, to learn and grow, and to show up as we are rather than as who we think we're supposed to be. Setting healthy boundaries is one of the most essential yet often overlooked aspects of maintaining well-being and cultivating meaningful relationships. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what is acceptable and what is not in our interactions with others, and they serve as a form of self-respect. Establishing boundaries is not about shutting people out or being rigid. It's about creating a space where mutual respect, trust, and emotional health can thrive. Healthy boundaries allow us to maintain our sense of self while still engaging deeply with others, ensuring that our own needs, values, and emotions are honored without being compromised by external pressures. At its core, boundary setting is about recognizing our own limits emotionally, mentally, and physically, and communicating those limits clearly to the people around us. This can be difficult, especially in cultures or families where self-sacrifice and putting others' needs before our own are seen as virtues. Many of us have been taught that saying no is selfish, or that we should always be accommodating to avoid conflict or hurt feelings. But the reality is that constantly putting others' needs above our own, without any regard for our personal boundaries, leads to burnout, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. Healthy boundaries, therefore, are not about selfishness, they are about self-preservation and maintaining a balanced, fulfilling life. One of the reasons setting boundaries can feel so challenging is because it requires us to assert ourselves and be vulnerable at the same time. When we communicate our boundaries, we are essentially telling others what we need to feel safe, respected, and valued. This can feel risky because there's always a fear that our boundaries won't be respected or that we'll be perceived as difficult or uncooperative. However, without boundaries, we run the risk of losing ourselves in our relationships. We may find ourselves constantly overextending, saying yes when we really mean no, or feeling overwhelmed by the expectations others place on us. Boundaries help us protect our time, energy, and emotional well-being, ensuring that we don't sacrifice our own needs for the sake of pleasing others. It's important to understand that boundaries are not one size fits all. They vary from person to person and even from situation to situation. What feels like a healthy boundary in one context might feel too restrictive or too loose in another. This is why self-awareness is key to setting boundaries. We need to be in tune with our own emotional and physical states in order to recognize when our boundaries are being crossed. For instance, we may notice feelings of irritation, frustration, or fatigue when we're overcommitted or when someone is consistently demanding more from us than we're comfortable giving. These feelings are important signals that our boundaries need to be strengthened or reinforced. When setting boundaries, clarity and consistency are crucial. It's not enough to simply have boundaries in our minds. They need to be communicated clearly and consistently to others. This can be as simple as saying, I need some time to recharge, so I won't be able to help with this today. Or I'm uncomfortable discussing that topic, so let's talk about something else. These kinds of statements may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if we're not used to asserting our needs. But over time, we become more confident in expressing our boundaries, and we find that others are more likely to respect them when we communicate them with clarity and conviction. Another important aspect of boundary setting is recognizing that boundaries are not static. They can and should evolve over time. As we grow and change, our needs, priorities, and relationships also shift, which means that our boundaries may need to be adjusted accordingly. For instance, a boundary that worked well for us when we were single might need to be reassessed once we enter into a romantic relationship or start a family. Similarly, boundaries we set at work may need to be adjusted as we take on new responsibilities or navigate different team dynamics. The key is to remain flexible and open to reevaluating our boundaries as needed, while still maintaining a strong sense of self-respect. Setting healthy boundaries also involves being mindful of other people's boundaries. Just as we want our own boundaries to be respected, we must also honor the boundaries of those around us. This means paying attention to the cues and signals others give us about their comfort levels, whether it's in terms of time, emotional availability, or personal space. Being aware of and respecting other people's boundaries not only strengthens our relationships, but it also creates a culture of mutual respect where everyone feels valued and safe. In focusing on ourselves rather than others, we reclaim the power to shape our lives with intention and authenticity. By practicing personal accountability, avoiding the comparison trap, embracing imperfection, building resilience through self-reflection, and setting healthy boundaries, we foster a deeper connection with who we truly are. This journey of self-awareness enables us to honor our own needs and values while engaging meaningfully with the world around us. When we prioritize our growth and well-being, we cultivate the inner strength necessary to lead a more fulfilled, resilient, and purpose-driven life, free from the distractions and pressures of external validation.